6:40, let's have a look at the front pages for you. And joining us today, our senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and former Conservative advisor, or as we like to call her, Mrs Nelson, Claire Pearsall. Good to see you both this morning.
My favourite husband and wife duo.
Oh, yes.
Nigel, let's start with you, shall we? The front page of the Mail, indeed many of the papers today, actually. No way back for Prince Andrew.
No, I mean, more trouble for Prince Andrew. What's happened is that the closed files on the Epstein case in America have been open now. This was from the Miami Herald, managed to actually force them to be opened. And, of course, now a load of names are tumbling out of them, including Andrew, who turns out to get mentioned 69 times. So the argument now is that any chance he had of coming back to proper royal duties, that's disappearing completely. And it looks like, I mean, if the Mail is to be believed, that he's going to lose his nice little pad at Royal Lodge in Windsor and be shoved into Harry's home, which is Frogmore Cottage.
That's not too
bad. But none of that's new, though, is it? I mean, this was all meant to be happening anyway.
I think that one of the quotes from a palace insider, whoever that might be, is that he was already off royal duties anyway, that obviously he has sort of... he can meet the family privately and go to family occasions, but the royal side of it's gone completely. Mm-hmm. I suppose if he does get shoved out of his home, that would be another punishment that the king could actually issue to him. Mm. But I mean, really, the mere fact that he's got so many mentions there seems to show that he was much more entwined with Epstein than perhaps he ever cared to admit. Mm. And again, still the question remains, why did he pay £10 million if there was nothing to actually worry about?
Yeah, well, yes, exactly. Wow. Can we have a look at the Eye, Claire, because campaigning is basically underway for the general election now, whenever that may be, and we're getting some real tempters from the Labour Party who say there won't be any tax cuts. Oh. I mean, that's the oddest thing to go on.
It is. It was quite a strange speech yesterday. I watched it, listened to it, have read more about it than is probably healthy. But it was not massively inspiring. And I think if you are looking to launch your campaign and want to bring hope to a nation, saying, no tax cuts, it's not really the way to go about it. Now, I kind of understand his point, and when you look at the detail, there is some method to his madness. He wants to grow the economy, and you kind of think, OK, well, everybody wants to grow the economy, so what are you going to do about it? And there was nothing particularly laid out. There was nothing particularly clear. He just wanted to pull the lever.
Pull the lever. That was the thing. And it's fair to say, isn't it? I mean, Nigel, even from your sceptical position, it's fair to say if there was a lever to pull to grow the economy, Jeremy Hunt would have pulled it, wouldn't he?
Well, you'd have thought so, but the whole thing is that the Tories are in a strange position because the lever that Keir Starmer wants to pull, they keep rubbishing. And this is the idea of spending £28 billion, probably mostly from borrowing, on UK Energy, a new green energy company.
Yeah, hold on, though. They rolled back. They rolled back on that.
The trouble is it has been watered down. I do appreciate it's been watered down. You're talking about sort of the second half of a parliamentary term. So even if an election now, it would be 2 years away before they could do it.
Yeah, so they're saying no tax cuts for 2 years, and they can't even start grow the economy for 2 years.
Well, I mean, they can't do this bit of it anyway. I mean, the problem really comes down to what the situation is they inherit from the Tories. So it looks like we're going to get a load of tax cuts in March from the Tories that Labour will probably have to stick with them, except maybe an inheritance tax. If the Tories do cut or abolish it, Labour will probably reintroduce inheritance tax. But on other tax areas, if they drop income tax or they increase thresholds so people have a bit more money to spend, it's unlikely Labour will deal with that. Well, if they've got no money and interest rates are still high, they can't borrow the money that they intended.
But then that gives rise to the fact that Labour really aren't being honest. If they're going to say that they're spending out, that they want to pay doctors more, nurses more, teachers more, build more schools, have more classroom spaces, and there's no money,
well,
then I think they need to be really, really quite honest with the public. There aren't going to be tax cuts. There are actually going to be tax rises.
There are, yes.
That's
I mean, and they've announced the
crux of the matter.
They've announced the tax rises. So you've got 3.2 billion coming from non-doms by taxing them. So they will actually pay taxes in Britain rather than taxes.
Well, apart from those non-doms who leave as a result.
There are 36,000 non-doms in Britain. The independent estimates are fewer than 100 would actually leave if they were taxed. You're absolutely right, Stephen. I mean, in the event they all pushed off, you're not going to get that kind of money. But at the moment, according to the research, and I mean, it's been done by the London School of Economics, Warwick University, not many would push off. I presume Rishi Sunak and his wife would disappear because they go to California to take up a new job.
That's what he'd like to do anyway, wouldn't he?
But on the basis of that, you're talking about 3.2 billion that would raise. One of the big plans is that would be enough for 200,000 extra operations to cut down NHS waiting lists. And then you've still got another £1.4 billion to play with.
OK.
But they seem to have spent it 4 times over, which is my point.
Well, they haven't. They've got the extra 1.4 billion.
Well, Nigel, let's stick to the theme of potentially paying doctors more, shall we? Or not. The Health Secretary, Victoria Atkins, has given a warning to striking doctors, isn't she?
Yeah, she's saying that the health service doesn't belong to them, which is true. It belongs to all of us. Where we are with this is that, I mean, unfortunately, the doctors started off by being totally unrealistic about the kind of pay claim that they're after. They were talking about 35%. They've moved away from that. 35% was just ridiculous. Now we're in that sort of standoff position where Victoria Atkins, the Health Secretary, is saying, right, I won't talk to the doctors unless they call off their strikes. And what the doctors are saying is, well, we're obviously not going to call off our strikes because that's what actually gets people into talks. So until one side bends on that, we have a problem. I think that the answer is the government should at least talk to the doctors, just to at least keep dialogue open, rather than be stubborn about it and say, well, you must call off your strike. Well, striking is the only thing a worker's got to be able to actually pursue a pay claim.
But if the only aim is to get the government round the table and the government is saying we'll get round the table in 20 minutes, is what Victoria Atkins is saying, if the strike action is called off, then why don't you just get round the table?
Well, because you then lost the muscle that you had to get yourself there for the pay negotiation.
Well, on the same point then, why does the government say, for the sake of the NHS, don't switch it off, we'll talk to you anyway?
But I think this is this battle of wills, isn't it? Neither side wanting to give in, and it feels as though the patients are going to be the ones that suffer in the long run. Neither side wants to look like it's conceding ground. The government doesn't want to give in on its position. And I think, to be fair to Victoria Atkins, she has been more open than previous health secretaries to want to get round the table, and I think that's great. But she's now stuck in this position where this kind of ongoing battle of you back down, no, you back down first. And it isn't winning anybody's hearts and minds. And I think the doctors are going to now start to lose the public support because people are seeing operations being withheld, outpatient appointments now being backed up. And this is one of the longest strikes that we've seen, and it's going to cut really, really hard at a time where winter pressures are enormous. So I think you need to see some backing down. I don't know who's going to blink first, but somebody has to. Yeah,
but if the government just said, OK, we will talk to you now during this 6-day strike, come in and we'll talk to you and we'll try and sort out some kind of claim. They did the same thing with the consultants. Consultants ended up with 11%. So on the basis of that, if you can get the junior doctors in, that'd be great. The government tried the same game with the rail workers, wouldn't talk to them while they were striking. The rail workers stuck it out, and as a result of that, they've now settled and got a reasonable pay claim.
But then you're still seeing strikes go on. So there's no guarantee, even if she said, OK, I'll come and see you whilst you're still striking, and they make some kind of agreement, it doesn't mean that there are going to be no strikes again in the future. It doesn't mean that this industrial action is going to stop immediately.
But that applies to any industry.
I think you need to have something in return, and that's what's not happening. Both sides need to give something. I don't know what that is. I would hate to be health secretary. I really, really would. But it just feels a bit like the railway workers, where you think you've made progress, you think you have an agreement, and then that is reneged on somewhere down the line.
Well, hang on, but the RMT have done a deal. I mean, the RMT was striking for over a year. What do we have? 18 months of strikes with the RMT. Thanks to those strikes, they managed to get a pay deal they could accept, and now the trains are back and running. Well, the RMT trains are back and running. Yeah,
but it doesn't account for all of the other
the TfL continues,
unions involved in all of this. And it's not just one union when you start looking at the health service either. There is more than one union. This one at the moment is junior doctors, so it's the GMB. But there are others that join in on all of this. And this is what I absolutely cannot stand when it comes to trade unions, is that one will take an agreement and then another one will step in and go, actually, but this isn't working for us. So
I just wonder at what point, Claire, you just go, well, make your own breakfast, Nigel.
Actually, that sounds like tomorrow.
OK. Just to update you on Oscar Pistorius, by the way, he has now been released from prison after his conviction for murdering his girlfriend, Reva Steenkamp, in 2013. So he has now been released from the prison in Atteridgeville, which is near Pretoria. He's going to his uncle's house in Pretoria, where he's on very strict parole conditions. Which includes no media interviews, should be said. So we're not going to hear anything from him till 2029.
Yes. South Africa's Correctional Services Department has said he's left the South African jail and is now at home, where he will be subject to very strict conditions. But yes, served 11 years in prison. Apparently now looks like a very, very different man to the athlete that entered prison 11 years ago.
Well, yes. Well, he wasn't, because he was originally convicted of in effect, manslaughter, but that was then overturned several years later and sort of upgraded, if you like, to murder. So I think he served 8 years, and another with 5 on parole, or something of that nature. But I mean, hugely controversial, because normally you don't talk about perpetrators of crime in this way. You talk about the victims. But this is different. He was an international superstar.
A hero to so many, wasn't he?
Whose life is now totally gutted. 37? I mean, it's...
I would say he's still got his whole life ahead of him at 37 years old.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know what his life will look like. Yeah, I don't know what that life will look like.
It's not going to be like this.
No.
You know, not going to be involved in sport, not going to be involved, no promotions, no nothing. All done. Anyway, look, we've got more coverage on that coming up for you at the top of the hour. In the meantime, let's just cheer ourselves up, Claire, should we, with this luxury penthouse you can buy in the Battersea Power Station boiler house.
It is the most amazing property. I've had a good old look at it.
Well, I'd hope so for the price.
You'd think so. It has got the most amazing views of London. So it's in the iconic Battersea Power Station with the views of the White Towers that everybody knows as you come along the river. But for £31 million.
31 million?
I mean, as you can see, I mean, the footage that we're showing at the moment is of an apartment like no other. It has got its own garden, it has got wall-to-ceiling windows, it has even got staff suite and office. So if you should wish to put your staff somewhere...
I have to say, for 31 million quid, I wouldn't want to buy a flat.
No, nor would I. And also, I'm not sure I want to live in a power station. If you had that kind of money, wouldn't
Above
you
a shopping centre now, isn't it?
Yes, you could do that. But if you had that kind of money, wouldn't you want a really big country pad with acres of ground and animals running around?
Prime property in the centre of London. It also comes with 4 parking spaces. Which for London...
well, that would...
I mean, come on.
That's a selling point. That's worth 31 million.
And secure parking, which is always a premium thing in London properties.
Well, it is, but 31 million quid.
For a 4-bed flat.
I'd buy Cumbria. For that. I would. I just say absolutely crazy.
You'd want more
price.
space.
Ridiculous money, yeah.
Than an apartment like that. So as beautiful as it is, but somebody will pay it, and that's
Somebody will.
That person who pays for it will probably just be their little London bolt hole, won't it?
Yeah.
And they'll have
they won't
somewhere
live there
wonderful
full
elsewhere.
time.
Yeah, of course they won't.
4 bedrooms.
Yeah, and their own garden.
And their own
And
garden.
a car parking space.
And a car parking.
4.
Oh, 4 car parking
Four
spaces.
car parking
There you go. Lovely stuff. Look, Nigel, Claire, thank you.
Thank
we shall see
you
you a
very
little bit
much.
later on for more of the same. But let's have a look at the weather for you now with Alex.